Hello, welcome. I'm Christine, the co-host, and I'm here with the other co-host. That's why it's called co-host, Florian. Hi, Florian. It's lovely.
Christine.
Quickly, if you don't know who we are, I'm Christine, CEO and founder of Let's Talk, a company that provides training and coaching for leaders to unlock entrepreneurs within an organization through internal communications, training, coaching. And Florian, do you want to say quickly hello and tell the world who you are?
My name is Florian Hager. I'm the founder of Flow Starter, and over the years I developed a technique that helps individuals as well as teams to perform under pressure when it's about high stakes, to perform on demand, achieve peak states, and do so by creating units out of teams, and so implement structure into the company and embed the teams in their roles where they belong to, so they perform actually at their best.
Awesome. And we are having these conversations, which are leadership insights that hopefully help you to get a bit of insights of what's happening in the world and what you as a leader might want to think about. And today, as you can see here, we talk about employee engagement. Now, we saw this article and thought, oh, it's because employee engagement fell to an 11-year low at the beginning of this year and in this year in 2024. And that is quite a lot, dropping by 30% and being the lowest it has ever been in 11 years. And that's what we want to talk about today. So employee engagement, why is that important? How can you see if they're actually engaged, etc., etc.? So, Florian, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, basically, what we found was a study from Gallup that said it has dropped and lower than 80% now in 2024, which is even lower than in 2023. So the problem is that employees don't connect to mission and purpose, and satisfaction is dropping down because roles clarities are not clear or are deteriorated over the past 4 years. So basically, something happened after or during Corona, what companies or people, employees are not coming back from. So it's a split of remote working and on-site working, and people are not really 100% clear anymore. So this is one of the reasons they say is responsible for dropping satisfaction. But what is also a huge topic is that Gallup's found that one of the biggest reasons is that most companies say it's an HR topic only. So while it should be a strategic topic, actually, employee engagement, most people just say it's an HR topic. It's not for the executive board. HR decides, you do. And what I have seen in the past is that when this is delegated from top down and the C-level is not really on board with anything that HR is doing, HR is just, making this and that, sometimes the measures or the things that HR is doing don't really hit the nail on the head. So you don't overcome these issues if workplaces are not planned strategically and intentionally. And this is something that has to be woven into the whole construct of the organization, which means we're again back to culture, where we always go back to culture, because it's something that has to be coming from everywhere.
Yes.
Do you have experience with that?
Yes, of course. I think employee engagement is not just the employees on a specific level. It's engaging everyone, and especially the upper level, and they need to get involved. And this is also a lot of times where the employees feel detached and not heard by the upper level, the C levels, let's say, because they don't engage, and they, like you said, they outsource it. We're not saying that the C-suite needs to do everything, because they are there for a reason, and then you have departments to do other things. But like you just said, Florian, it needs to be a strategic decision. And another thing, I think, maybe just the importance of why this actually matters. Now we can say, oh, employee engagement is down. Well, okay, so what? Well, that has obviously an effect on so many things, and it's costing organizations actually a lot of money because the productivity goes down, the motivation goes down, people fall ill more easily, or they just call in sick, even though they might not be, because they don't feel that they are needed, they don't feel that they're valued, and that they're not heard, really. And one other interesting aspect that you mentioned is this, what the study said, that it also has to do with remote work. I think a lot of flexible working, which includes smart working, remote working, whatever you call it, is a motivational factor for people, and like a work-life balance thing. And I mean, Amazon just canceled their remote work policy and said, we want everyone to return back into the office. Now we shall see how that goes. But yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is basically one thing. I mean, people started tasting some kind of freedom and some kind of, you know, being responsible, how they manage their own time. Flexibility is a huge thing. And I think after Corona, after COVID, people had this taste and they don't want to let go of it anymore. So when now decisions go backwards to where we were before COVID, people are very upset. So this is what I have seen a lot. So environments need to fit the cultures, and culture is something that developed over the time. So we had like a 2-3 year time where remote work became a huge thing. And so it is a thing now. And just calling it off is one of the biggest factors for demotivation I've seen in companies so far. But this is not everything. Employee engagement also can rise through things like doing coachings, like doing coaching managers, coaching mid-level managers, developing people in general, giving people the opportunity to grow, helping them to become better than they are, to finding it interesting to get up in the morning and say, today I can learn something, today I can be more than I was yesterday. And I think this is also a huge factor what people underestimate when it comes to supporting the growth of my staff. Yes. And not just managers, mid-level managers, but throughout the whole company.
Yeah, completely agree. And I experienced that myself, actually. When I was working in an organization, I wanted to do a specific training. So they were also had this investor in people little medal. Yeah, so they called themselves investor in people. They got this little medal, which is not always evaluating, I think, on a proper thing, because it basically means also a bit more, but that they give you free coffee and tea, which is not investing in people, which should be there anyway. And in my case, for example, I was, they said, oh yeah, and if anyone wants any specific trainings or you see something that's interesting, talk to us. So I did. And what did they say? Yeah, no, we can't do that. There's no budget for it. So you had to fill in also a form and build a case why you want to go there, of course, because not everyone can just say. But it was training that was really relevant to my role and everything. And we were talking about first a one-day thing. Okay, it was one day, and it was almost nothing, £100. So it's not like I was asking something. It was an introduction to a specific topic, and they said no, they can't do that. So what? I got really demotivated. I had to take holidays. I asked, okay, I pay, can you give me at least a day off? And they said no. So I took holidays, I paid, and afterwards I was right. And I did tell my manager back then, I said, you know what? You are not investing in me, so I'm not investing in you anymore. And my motivation went downhill, but I was extremely open about that. And I think not many people do that. But this is what's happening. And I experienced that myself. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I'm very sad to hear that. It's funny because, and funny in a way, I just had the same example with one of my clients that she was actually working on a project that was supposed to bring the company some millions, saving him money. And the training that she asked for, it's a facilitation training, it's a 4-step program. And yes, it takes a few weeks or months. It's not something small. It's a big thing, but it's small because it's cheap because it's organized internally. But on the end, she organized everything. She pitched it. She had everything done. She worked days on this pitch and on the project, and everything seemed green. She booked the hotel. Everything was done. People said, "You're in, so it's so cool." And then she just got a mail that said, "Sorry, no, it's not possible. We don't have the resources." And that was like such a stroke for her, that like a strike that a really hard blow. We were worked so hard to actually get her there, and then with a justification that was not even correct, it was not even honest, which is the next point, she got turned down. So I think what I've learned from that is how her motivation went from 120 down to I don't know where below. So you don't want to do that. If people want to do more, if they strive for growth, if they want to grow, please support them, because this is the biggest asset you have. A motivated person, intrinsically motivated, that wants to grow is more worth than many other things, because most employee engagement tools don't make that happen. So it's something that comes from inside. And if you kill that, it's very rarely coming back. And it takes a lot of work and time to build that trust again that you lose when you give wrong reasons or false reasons or just pretends why you don't support them.
Yes, absolutely. And don't forget, you listeners, that if you lose a great person, a great talent in your company, it's costing you so much more to get someone new in that might be as good as that person. But it takes so long to get them to that point with the onboarding, the cost for recruitment, and everything else. So if we're talking hard facts here, you're losing money if you are not helping your people to grow. You're losing out on money, even though they're investing some. Yeah, maybe
it means. Sorry. It's basically a very simple thing. When your company doesn't grow or your organization doesn't grow, it probably dies. And I think it goes the same way with employees. If they don't grow or they don't feel they grow, although they want to, internally, they feel like they die.
Yes.
And this is what makes them actually get more and more taking sick leaves, don't want to be in a company, don't feel intrinsically motivated, don't like all this kind of stuff comes with that, because growth is something that is so innate to humans. And another thing is that even though, and there's another study from Gallup that said, even though multidimensional approaches to well-being have been met in a lot of organizations throughout the world in the last years, 80% of employees worldwide are not actively engaged. So they ask, how could that be? What is the thing? And they say employee engagement programs fall because they're either too complicated, so it doesn't meet the core physical needs of the employees, or there are incorrect employee measurement or engagement metrics, which means that there is a strong engagement, but there is no performance outcome on the other side. So this has to be also in balance. And what I have personally seen in actually my last job now was there's an overuse of surveys, but there is no coming up to it. No, how to say, you don't work on the feedback that you get. You don't. So people will have the opportunity maybe to say what they want to say. They have the opportunity to be open and give feedback. But if they see after a while that it's just hoax and actually nothing happens, nothing changes, nothing gets or comes back to them, that's another reason for them to actually say, why would I share my opinion? Nobody's listening anyway.
Yes, really great point. And it's something that came up. I was running this executive roundtable the other day, and that was exactly what you just mentioned, but they've done that in a good way. So they basically say ongoing, give us feedback, and they have like listening hours where people can just come and talk to them about whatever they want. Okay, and they start opening up, and they start understanding the employees better and see what's making them tick. And every time maybe someone mentioned something, and one example was, okay, I think I'm not rewarded enough for my efforts. Okay, so something that's negative, let's say, they take it and try to turn it into something positive. Okay, we need to look into rewarding our people for their efforts. So what could that look like? And what would be good for them? Is it like a financial reward? Is it a t-shirt? Is this like a celebration in between with the colleagues? Is it flowers? He came up with all these examples, just saying, okay, we take it serious. Someone says something, we make a note, and we take it serious, and we feed back to them with suggestion, with questions. So they actually think, oh, they are listening. And that means they start building up the trust, and people start opening, because great that you do surveys, but like you just said, if you do not feedback and if you do not follow up on the things that people are saying, even positive stuff, then it's not going to work, because people will think it's a waste of time filling in these surveys.
Yeah, and I love what you say, because it implies that you actually, in the first place, collect feedback from the people. And what I have seen in most very fast scaling companies, most structures of communications are not built in a way that the feedback has any chance to get from top down and from down up. So how do you actually do strategic decisions in your company, in your C-level, if you don't know what the ground floor is doing, what the people actually that do the stuff are doing? Because you will never know what they know. So in order to, get strengths and weaknesses, what are our core strengths, what are our core weaknesses? How do we make strategic decisions on the market if we don't know actually what we're really good at and what we are sucking at? And this is something you can only collect from all the other layers in your company. And this is why it's so important to collect that feedback all the time, not just for employee engagement, but it's also giving you all the food that you need for thought to make this decision.
Absolutely. And again, it's not that the C-suite needs to read all the feedback forms and things like that. That can be the department, the HR, whatever, like we said at the beginning, that they outsource it to. They can do like a summary of all the things and the main points, and feed that back to the C-level. But there should be this interest. Okay, I want to know what this is about, and let me know what we're doing about it. Let me know your ideas, and maybe I have some other ideas. So getting actively involved in that and asking actively to participate in that way, to at least know what's happening, because exactly like you said, there is often disconnect between the C-suite and the rest of the team. Okay, there's then one manager that reports to them. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to have this open door policy. Whoever wants to knocks on the door and talks to me, because that might be, especially if we're talking about multinational companies, organizations, a bit difficult to do. There are hierarchies for a reason, and that's okay. We are saying that you, at each level, need to be engaged and need to be knowing what's going on if you're in on the C-level, to act. And I want to come back to one point that you mentioned earlier as well: honesty and transparency. When you gave this example that you mentioned, they gave a fake, more or less, reason, and it was obvious that this wasn't the real reason. I think honesty and transparency is so important. Again, comes down to communication and in between communication, because maybe since they briefed that person until she was feeding back with that presentation and the suggestions, maybe something changed and they just forgot to tell her, or they didn't want to tell her, or whatever it is. And that's okay. Things change in organizations, but you need to be open and transparent and talk to the people, because otherwise they just think, okay, why did I just work my butt off to get this done? And now you're pretending it's not needed anymore, or you're pretending for a wrong reason, and you're not honest with me. So there, and like I said, this is going to take a long time, if ever you will be able to gain back that trust, because these people are the motivated, intrinsic motivated people that give everything for the organization. And if that's not met, that the organization gives everything for them, they will start looking for a new job.
Yeah. And another very powerful way in order to disengage employees or demotivate them is if they are not really clear about their roles in their organization. So you might say to yourself, ask yourself, what do you mean? Like, everybody, you get this position, this is your role, this is what you do. But I've seen it firsthand also that some people get into a job, they interviewed and they start working after like 2, 3, 4 months. They have the first conversation, but what happens in the time between?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that these conversations have to happen more frequently, because when people and companies and organizations change over the time, especially I work a lot with fast scaling businesses. So change is innate. It's changing every week, change something. So also the roles of the people change. And it's important that there is some kind of communication loop, that these people know what is going on and how did my role change and what is expected of me now, so I can do my job properly and I feel that I'm doing it right. Because insecurity is one of the biggest factors also that makes people not like to go to their job, because they don't know what they're doing. And I have seen what it does to people, to really good people. They come to company, but the CEO is never in reach. Then I don't know who to talk to really. And I feel like I don't know what to do. And I've heard this 2, 3 times already, that people say, before I had my first really deep conversation, after my first 3 months, the first time is over. Now it's about whether I get into the company or not. And after 3 months, I was already so demotivated. I was like so lost. I say I didn't want to be here anymore, because I felt lost.
Yes, absolutely. I like, thank you for mentioning that, because that's a lot of times like people do that. First, of course, when the trial period is over, there's the talk, the review, and then the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens in between? And how do they know they're on the right track? How do they know they're making progress? How do they know what to do next? Maybe they even reached a goal faster than expected, so they might be lost in, okay, what do I do now? And if there's no clear guidance or co-creation of your next goals, which it should be, then for you and the company, then that is a problem, and people will just get lost. They get involved in other things, they get demotivated, all these things that we mentioned, less productive.
Yeah.
If there's not this clear communication all year round, at least the opportunity.
And I love what you said now, because it also connects to the next point, which is also very important. It sounds very simple, though sometimes it just gets forgotten, is if you don't connect and if you don't communicate, when do you praise your people? How do you give them not just feedback, but also tell them, wow, you did a really good job. You did it beyond my expectations, and this kind of stuff. People need encouragement. And what I've also read at Gallup's is that great managers encourage their staff frequently.
Yes, absolutely. You should. But one point is really important. You should praise them when they do something good, not in the end of the year review. Oh, you remember
Exactly.
this project? You've done really well there. Okay, like a year ago. A lot of times, people give feedback if something doesn't go well immediately, but if something goes well, it's just brushed over, and because it was your job to do that, so why would I praise you? So it's not just going above and beyond. If someone fulfilled something and they did a good job, tell them in that moment, and find a way that works for them to receive the feedback for that specific person, and that you celebrate that maybe in the organization, But some people are not like that. Some people want a one-to-one where you said, well done for this, it's really great, da da da. Some people like, I tell the whole team in the next team meeting how well you've done. So you need to see what's the person's personality and what do they prefer, and then choose that for them, what works for them.
I love what you say. This individual approach is what I have seen in most effective managers. They really get a feeling for their employees, for their team, for everyone, and they congratulate, they recognize, they feedback individually, like really that fits to that personality of that person, and even how they treat them is completely individual. And this makes a person feel special, makes a person feel seen. And this is basic human needs. And you might say, yeah, but it's a workplace, they come here to work and they get paid. But if you want to do more than average, you have to be willing to actually care more for who is around you and who that really is as a person. Yeah. On a personal level. They say basically person first and employee second.
Love that, love that. And I mean, the topic is employee engagement, and we're talking a lot about communication, talking to people, listening to people, telling them that they've done well, things like that, because that's actually what it comes down to. At the beginning, you mentioned the word culture, which we, like you said, always come back to, but that's what it is about. Okay, yeah. And this is how you engage people. And also when you said, okay, they have like an employee engagement program. So what does that look like? And does that actually work? You need to see. And also there, if you say, I want to do that, you trial it. Better you talk to people and maybe develop this engagement program with your employees together. And you get some feedback before you actually start implementing it. And then you can fine tune it. You can see what do we leave out, what would be put in. If we want to talk about it, we can even add in here into the mix employee benefits, which is a big motivator, and get engagements and things like that. How do they get motivated? And how is that recognized with the benefits that the company is offering? Yeah.
I like that, because that also addresses another point, which comes to also human needs, which is fun. People want to play.
Yes.
And people like challenge. So when you develop these programs together, this is all the benefits that you have that actually engages people, that employs people, really, that makes them feel like, wow, this is a place I want to be. And not, okay, finally it's done and I'm getting out. So if you create an environment where people are challenged, people can grow, people have fun, people can play, and they're challenged to grow, I mean, this is like the best way to grow them, to grow your company. And this is basically something that some companies or some organizations try to build in a way, like it's called gamification. And it helps you to create systems that are in place, that you create, like you said, Christine, together to help you and help everyone to be on track with employment, with engagement.
Yes. And also, just to add into the mix, we're talking about employees being engaged with the tasks that they're doing and with their managers. But of course, this also counts for the engagement within the team, with other team members, not just on a higher level or anything, on a lower, on the same level, whatever. And I mean, you're talking about gamification, and some people might think, okay, so how do I do that? But we already mentioned some stuff. So how do you give actually those rewards where employees can win a prize? I know actually of a company that created, and that's quite an extreme example, because what they did, do you remember from your childhood maybe those vending machines where you put in like a 50 pfennig back then, not cent, you turn it, the wheel, and then the chewing gum comes out, or something like that, or a surprise. Yeah. So what they did, they had one in their office, and they had like little bubbles where you can put in a piece of paper and put them in there. And that was basically, okay, what kind of reward would I love? What is one of my dreams? And they said there's no limits. So it could be, I want a new bike. I want a PlayStation. I want a day out with the team. Whatever you wanted, you could write on there. Okay. And then they put that in. And then from time to time, they were drawing one and made it happen. And I think that was a really good example. Of course, you can think of some limitations because someone said, I would love to go to the moon. So that's a bit difficult. But I think what they did in that case is, obviously they couldn't go to the moon. But what they did, they created like an experience as if you would go in the moon, like gravity kind of thing where people can go. So they really tried and said, you tell us what you want, and we will make that true for you.
Wow. So this is very interesting what you say, because there's two different ways of do these reinforcements. There is continuous reinforcement and there's partial reinforcement. And continuous reinforcement is like the one category where you all the time praise, you all the time give something according to behavior, but the partial reinforcement is something that studies show prove more, how to say, more successful, not either or. It's something that you do on top of it. So you have the continuous reinforcement, there's some little things all the time, but when you do the partial reinforcement, that is something that people are waiting for. And it's like, when is the next thing gonna happen? So people start performing better on a long run because they're like excited, can't wait for the next thing. And it happens just like that. So it's like something like the highest peak on a movie on the end or something like this. You know, people wait for the time. And this is what you want to have. It's this thing that also this childlike, playful thing. People will start talking about it. I've seen this in companies when people are like, yeah, the next time when it comes, I'm ready, you know, this kind of stuff. This is what you want. People engaged, people are on fire.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like these little surprise moments when it's not expected. And like you said, this continuous reinforcement, is it expected then? Because people say that if you stop that, then it's not good either. So if you do that all the time, but these little surprise things is like when it happens, really. And when there's this feeling that employee then has, and it's like, oh, and they get excited and they wait, like you said, for it, and don't know maybe when it happens. So yeah, that's lovely. Any final other thoughts that we haven't mentioned yet before we wrap up from your side?
I mean, I can just sum up and say what my experience shows in the last 10 years working with organizations is that a motivated and engaged employee is the best asset that you can have, since all businesses are built on people, and motivation is a resource or an asset that is very difficult to buy, is very expensive to buy. So when people start engaged and motivated, the number one thing you want to do is you want to keep them that way. And you do so by asking a lot of questions and show interest. And I don't mean fake interest. I need to ask you standard questions. People feel that. People are not stupid. We're talking about congruency again. But it's really more about show real interest. And if you don't have the time for that, because I'm the owner, it's not my stuff, then find someone who is in charge for that, because you want to keep this asset as good as possible, because there is only this amount of really motivated people out on the market that are also skilled and have time. So yeah.
And I love that, because the answer I have sometimes from organizations, well, it's too much time they have to invest to understand each employee. It's impossible. We have 9,000 employees. Okay, but you are not managing 9,000 employees. You do have, and exactly what you just said, you have managers in place, you have other people in place that break it up into smaller groups. And they really need to take that time to understand and listen to those people, to each individual. And it pays off 100 times if you are investing that time at the beginning, and make that maybe part of your onboarding process already, So you don't have to think, oh, I need to speak to that person, and find a rhythm that works with each employee. So I think, yes.
There's one more thing I want to say. I also want to paint the downside of what happens if you don't. By experience, what I've seen is that once that there's this culture of I'm not listening, I don't get heard as an employee, like all this kind of stuff, people don't feel this kind of thing, rumor starts arising. And when people are not heard, they make up their stories. When people don't know what's going on, they create things in their heads. And it's a human nature that we are acting up on our own stories and create real scenarios. And once this starts happening, it's really difficult to get back from.
Yes,
and it can take forever, and it's expensive. So you really don't want to get there.
Yes, and it's actually damaging for the reputation for the company as well, because people talk. Okay, there's also websites like Glassdoor where people leave reviews about the experience working at a company. And this is a big, this can be a big benefit if you have a great company culture that engages with employees. This is a plus. And especially if you look at the newer generations as well, it's not about the money anymore. Of course, you need to pay. But it's all about this and the image and how they will be treated within that company.
Yeah.
So we hope this was interesting for everyone. We were talking.
I think,
a lot of other
sorry, I have to add that because I think it just came to my mind, and I think it's really important that psychologically there are studies that show that bad messages, negative things are being told 7 times more than positive things. So it's really important that positive things are communicated more, like consciously, because the negative ones, they go around anyway, very fast. So in order to compensate that, make sure that your communication lines are open and you have a lot of positive reinforcement going on, and you realize where people are at and listen to them as much as you can.
Yeah, and negative comments and things will happen, conversations, but then it's important that you listen and show them that you take it serious. What I mentioned earlier as well as an example. So to wrap it up, unless you have another last thing. Okay, so we talked about employee engagement and that it was on an 11 years low. And we talked about how training and coaching is really important to engage people, to show them remote work and how you can give them a bit more flexibility. We talked about honesty, being honest and transparent about reasons why projects might not go ahead. Told them as well that the work was not in vain and you might be able to use that at a later stage, for example. We even mentioned that some employee engagement programs fail and maybe how you can prevent that by involving them and involving all levels in the organization, top to bottom, bottom to top, no matter which position you hold. One other thing that was mentioned is that the clarity about what's expected and all of that, but about the role that someone has is super important to keep conversations going during the year, make it a bit of fun, know when and how to praise a person, and have that mix of partial and continuous reinforcement and positive praise. So Florian, thank you so much for another lovely conversations. I enjoy these. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too. Have a good one.
Bye.